All right, we're
Great.
recording.
And if Gaby, you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll do a little bit of frame setting for the thesis and dissertation context, and then we can jump right into the meat of the session.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. My name's Gaby DeYoung, and I am an IT accessibility specialist with UWIT. It's a mouthful, Accessible Technology Services. And my specialty or my area of focus is accessible digital documents. So I'm happy to bring information to you about creating more accessible content and also looking at the guidelines from the graduate school and how those things are in alignment. So looking forward to that.
So, I said before, but for the recording, my name is Liz Bedford, and I'm the scholarly communication and publishing librarian. But for today's purposes, the reason that I'm here is because I am the liaison to the graduate school for the electronic thesis and dissertation program. So we really work with them both on the administrative aspect, the stuff that's required to oh, and we can circle back in a minute. The uh, the context of the thesis and dissertation program is an administrative process, but it's also a publishing process, which is where the libraries comes in. And so, for the purposes of digital accessibility, these documents will eventually fall under the mandate that was set by the federal government around making documents accessible according to WCAG standards. Now, depending on when you graduate, that's going to have an impact on the specific workflow that you're going to be using. But really, this is, this this is the kind of thing where it's not just a law; it's also a really good idea. And so, even if this isn't a requirement for the current workflow, um, we are really encouraging you to think about digital accessibility of your documents. This is the set of framing concepts is something that's going to be really useful to you throughout your career as you're creating these documents. So for folks who are graduating this spring or this summer, you're not going to be seeing anything as part of the ETD workflow that talks about accessibility. We're still really encouraging you to make your documents accessible because eventually we're going to need to make those documents accessible if they're going to be online, which they are. Um, but once uh, once fall happens, we are also there is going to be a change. And this accessibility is going to be incorporated into that upload process for the thesis and dissertation workflow. We don't quite know what that looks like yet, and we are talking right now and spending the summer and thinking about what is the education that you all need in order to make that a smooth process. What are the tools that are required in order to make that a smooth process? So if you are graduating in fall, that's fall of 26 or forward, this is something that you're going to be encountering as you are preparing your thesis for the upload process into ETD Administrator. For those of you who are graduating in spring and summer, you're not going to see it in that process, but again, this is just something that we are really hoping that you take seriously, and we are really excited that Gaby is willing to help you all with the mechanics of how it works. Um, I also realized that we need to introduce Cass as well, who is another member of the libraries team, and I apologize for that. Cass, go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Cass Hartnett, she, her pronouns, and I'm the Gender, Women, and Sexuality Studies librarian. I'm glad to be here learning right along with you all.
So thank you all again, and Gaby, why don't you take it away?
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Elliot and Cassandra, for asking me to be here today and to share this information with this audience. So let me just take a moment here to share my screen. Okay, great. And let me move things around so I can see some faces. Okay, great. So wanted to start off by asking folks what tools they plan on using for creating their thesis or dissertation. So if you can just take a few moments and just pop that into the chat and just let us know, if you plan on using Word, or maybe you're planning on using Google Docs to create your thesis or your dissertation, or maybe you're planning on using something completely different like Pages, which is part of the Mac suite uh, of tools that comes with that operating system, or maybe you're using LaTeX. So just kind of curious to see what folks are using. Okay, Scrivener. Looks like some people are using Word. Excellent. Okay. So it looks like for the most part, people are planning on using Word. So that's great because the title of this presentation is How to Prepare and Test Your Thesis for Dissertation for Digital Accessibility. And in parentheses, I put in Word. We're just going to focus on that particular application today. And there may be options for future topics of different authoring applications in the future as well. Okay. So I wanted to start off by giving a definition of digital accessibility. And thank you, Mary Colleen, who is in attendance here today. This is a slide that she shows at a lot of her trainings and meetings that she coordinates. But I think that this really is a great way of kind of framing what digital accessibility is and what we're all working towards. So I'm just going to go ahead and read the definition. Digital accessibility means that we apply technical skills and tools to make all content we share online, and that includes websites, documents, slide decks, videos, etc., to make those multimedia fully accessible, equally available, and equally usable for all users, particularly people with disabilities who use assistive technology to navigate online content. And this is really in alignment with the newly updated Americans with Disabilities Act rule, which states that all public institutions and universities must make their digital content accessible. And that deadline was supposed to be today, but last Friday, the Department of Justice has extended that deadline out for another year. So we actually have until April 24th, 2027 to make all of our digital content online. So we've been there's been a lot of push to make our digital content accessible this past year, and things haven't changed. This just gives us a longer runway to make that happen before that deadline. It's important to also understand the things that we can control, the things that we have the ability to influence within our capacity. For example, there are a lot of tools, and you'll be shown a lot of best practices that can help you learn to achieve the foundations of digital accessibility. But it's also important to understand that there are extenuating circumstances that don't make this process seamless or 100% effective. But there are resources that the UW is looking at to help with more complex accessibility issues. And we're always looking at more resources and tools that are being developed and explored to help us get over that, to get over those things that are kind of out of our control. And it may seem that accessibility can feel very technical, but really at its core, it's about reducing barriers. So it's important to note that some people rely on accessible content to participate at all, but for others, it just makes things easier. So another way to think of it is that accessible content is essential for some, but it is helpful for everyone. So this will be kind of our agenda for this morning. We're going to talk about the accessible document workflow. and how this is in alignment with the graduate school guidelines for submitting a PDF for your thesis or your dissertation. We'll talk about creating structure and doing that through headings, lists, and tables. We'll talk about adding meaning to your content, including links in alt text for visual images. We'll talk about setting document properties. This is really simple, but this makes a huge difference in terms of accessibility. So we'll talk about setting the title of the document and the language. If you have a foreign language included in your thesis or your dissertation, then we'll talk about checking and reviewing your native file before exporting that to PDF. And then we'll talk about steps for correctly exporting that to a PDF that can be utilized by somebody who's using assistive technology. Okay, so we're going to get started here, and we're just going to jump right into the best practices of creating a more accessible thesis or dissertation. And the very first one is using structured headings. And this is probably the single most important thing that you can do. Structured headings are a way for screen reader users to navigate a document and kind of understand what the structure of the document is. Headings are announced by screen reader technology so users can understand the document structure, and it helps them to choose how to navigate the content. So screen reader users can call up a list of heading levels, and they can listen to kind of how the document or how the content is organized, and then they can use those heading levels to shift from one section to the next section. And the nice thing about using structured headings is that it's an easy way to create a table of contents within your document. Again, structured headings create structures, and then they provide an outline, and that structure is necessary for navigation. And you want to start off by using a heading level 1. I'll show you here in a minute. In the styles panel, there are options to use heading levels, or there's also an option for a title style as well. And this can get a little bit confusing. Usually people would think to structure their dissertation or their thesis title with a title style. That makes logical sense. However, it doesn't map as a heading level style. So it just maps as just a basic paragraph text, and isn't really included in the hierarchy of the heading level. So best practice is to actually style your title of your thesis or your dissertation as a heading 1. So how do you do that? Well, let's take a look here. I've got some screenshots to show you how you would stylize your title to a heading level. And this is a screenshot that's taken from Word for and Mac. But the location and the look of the menus is going to be very familiar, very similar in Windows as well. So just kind of want to orient you to how you would access that the styles information. And so on your in your instance of Word, we've got the styles pane that lives up here in the home ribbon. And you can also bump out that styles panel on Mac if you select this little styles pane icon here. Or if you're on a Windows machine, there's a little arrow in the lower right-hand corner. You can click on that little arrow, and it will expose this styles pane here. So what you see in this styles pane here is reflected in this styles panel up in the home ribbon as well. So these two things kind of mirror each other. And you'll notice that we do have heading levels that are included here in this list, and there's also a title. Now, if you select that title option, it's actually not going to turn it into a navigable heading level. So you want to make sure that you are stylizing your title as heading 1. And you can do that. There's a couple different ways to do that. For most people, they just start typing their title and then they'll stylize it however they want to, using some of these decoration tools such as the bold and italic, things like that. And you can do that. But once you have your title all figured out and it is included on your front page here, you can highlight that. And then you can go to the styles panel, either in the home ribbon or here on the right-hand side panel. And you can right-click on heading 1. And when you do that, you'll get this context menu here. And in that context menu, you can select the option that says Update Heading 1 to match selection. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep the formatting that you have placed for your title, and it's going to turn this into your heading level 1. So really easy way to do that, and it still conforms with the graduate school's requirements of making sure that you have your title page and also the font and formatting requirements that are included in there. You can still maintain that, and this will turn into your heading level 1. You can do the same things for your heading level 2s. Those are going to be your subcategories. Or your categories that are probably going to be the top level of your table of contents. And then you want to include heading level 3 for tertiary or sub levels of your outline. And that's going to formulate a nice structure for assistive technologies, and then a really easy way to create your table of contents that way. So speaking of which, I wanted to include the table of contents builder in Word. You can find that on the References tab, and that's in the upper left-hand corner. And it's a very simple tool to use. Once you have all of your heading levels properly stylized, you can choose how you want your table of contents to look. There are different options. There's classic, there's more formal and more modern. You can also change the formatting of these specifically if you're not happy with them. Once you've created that table of contents, you can use some of those decoration tools to change the formatting look if you wanted to. But it's going to keep the table of contents as a navigable menu. Okay. Just wanted to pause here and see if there are any questions. It looks like there's some questions in the chat, but Elliot's got those. All right.
Gaby, basically, we just wanted to say, I mean, people can do what they want with these headings, but I think if the heading 1 is the title of your whole dissertation, then the heading 2s could end up being your chapters.
Correct.
And then the heading 3s could end up being subheadings in your chapters.
Correct.
But
yes,
you wouldn't want to skip from like a heading 2 to a heading 4 because that would create problems.
Correct. Yeah, excellent. That's correct. You want to make sure that you are using the heading levels in proper descending order, as that kind of makes a more logical outline and logical flow for navigating to those segments of your dissertation. So that is correct. Yes, the title would be heading level 1, the chapters would be heading level 2, and then the sub chapters would be heading level 3. All right. Okay, let's talk about link text. So link text should be unique. It should be meaningful when it's read out of context. And this is the most important thing. It should help the users understand or know something about that destination before they click on it. So when screen reader users are navigating within a document, and they come up to a portion of the document that is link, the screen reader will announce link first, and then it will announce the link text. And so this is really helpful to give more context for the user as to where that link is going to go. If you're just using the URL as a link, the user is going to hear http:// blah, 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 blah. which it might be helpful. Sometimes URLs can be meaningful, but I've included a screenshot on this slide here that has a URL that would be really kind of confusing. So if in this case we have a PubMed, citation here. And at the very bottom, it has the URL https://doi.org/10.1016, so forth and so on. So this isn't very meaningful information for users. And instead, what we recommend is turning the title of the article or the chapter within the bibliography into that active link. And this is going to be much more meaningful for screen reader users and assistive technology users as to where that link is going to go. Just another point of interest, screen reader users can call up a list of all of the links within a dissertation or within a document, and they can navigate by link, or they can listen to all the links that are included in the document. And so if you have a bunch of links that have, http://, it just becomes really, really overwhelming. So that's why it's really helpful to have that meaningful link text in your bibliographies. And the same thing goes for your footnotes and your endnotes as well. If you're including information that has a URL, see if you can make the title of that article the meaningful link text. And then do not make that URL the link text. You can actually pretty easily remove links when you create them. And a simple way to create links is just to highlight the text, right-click on that text, and then you'll get that hyperlink dialog window, and that's where you can enter in your link text and also the URL as well. So many people are familiar with that. I wanted to include in the links section a little bit more information about footnotes and endnotes. On the References tab in both the desktop version of Word and the online version of Word, you have a lot of functionality here. And these tools are very accessibility friendly. So you have both the option to include citations, you can insert endnotes, and you can insert footnotes. For Windows Desktop and Windows Online, you have the option for the table of contents tool right here. You also have the option to insert your footnotes and insert your endnotes in the online version there. So use those automated features to create your endnotes and footnotes. Again, those are accessibility friendly. And so you don't need to do too much more, but just making sure that the URLs in your endnotes, footnotes, and bibliographies are actually more friendly. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about tables. Tables are very useful for communicating relationships between data. They're meant to present tabular data information. And it's especially useful when those relationships are expressed in a matrix of rows and columns. Now, if your data is best presented in a table, you want to make sure and keep that table simple. In Microsoft Word, it's not possible to make complex tables accessible. So if you have merged or split cells, you cannot properly identify the table header to allow the screen readers to accurately understand the header for a complex table. It just doesn't have that robust functionality. So if you are including tables in your thesis or dissertation, make sure that they're simple tables. So no split cells, no merged cells. And if you have, complex tables, you might want to consider dividing them into smaller tables, and then maybe including a heading above each one. So it's really important to define your header rows because screen readers will announce that information and it provides more context for the data. So without those headers, the user will hear the data, but they won't understand what context that is in or what the relationship is. And if you have tables that span rather several pages, you want to repeat the header row across those pages so that that relationship is maintained even when the table spans several pages. Okay, so if you're including a table in your Word document for your thesis or your dissertation, you can easily assign a table header just by selecting the table. And when you do that, you'll see this table design tab will appear. And if you select that table design tab, this will take you to this ribbon that we see here. And in the upper left-hand corner, there are checkboxes that will help you with defining your table header. If you select the checkbox for header row, that's going to turn this top row into your table header. And if first column is also selected, that's going to turn the information in this column as a header as well. So when a screen reader interacts with this table, they're going to get the proper context for this cell right here. So for 25th July 1898, they will get the corresponding information that this is the publication date for the Dallas Morning News. So that's how you would assign your table headers to a simple table like this in Word for Desktop. It's a little bit different if you're using Word for Web, and that's true for a lot of the concepts that we're going to be talking about today. Word for Web is not as robust as the desktop version, but you can complete some tasks. So you can actually define your table header in Word for the Web as well. It's a little bit different process. You have to highlight the top row of the table itself, and then you can select the table tab, and from there you get a drop down that you can just choose how you want your table header to go there. So if you want your table header row, you can highlight the top row and then select table header or select header row. If you want the first column, you would select the first column, and then you would go back here, and then you would choose first column from this drop-down list. It's a little bit different for Word for the Web. And let's see here. I've got one more slide I want to show you on this one. And this is for tables that span multiple pages. Again, I mentioned if you have a table that does that, you want to make sure to repeat the header row at the top of each page so that that association does not break. And to do that, you would go, and this is only possible in Word for Desktop, by the way. It's not this option is not available in Word for the Web. So to do this, again, you would select the entire table, and you get this table layout tab that will show up when you do that. And then you would select the properties icon from the home row here, and that's going to open up this table properties dialog box. And from there, you want to go to the row tab. So we've got lots of steps here, and then you want to take a look at the options. Now, by default, the top checkbox is checked, and the bottom checkbox is not checked. So the top checkbox says allow row to break across pages. And what that means is if your table is going to if your table row is going to expand past what you can see on the right hand margin, then it's going to break to the next page. And that's just actually a really bad table design. And I actually think that Microsoft should remove this. But what I recommend, or what we recommend, is that you uncheck this box because tables should not extend past the right-hand margin here, okay? But what you do want to check is you want to check the second box here that says repeat as header row at the top of each page. And what that does is if your table spans more than one page, then you do need to include that table header so that it doesn't break that association. Okay. Any questions about tables before moving on?
Gaby, we did have I don't know if this is something that you've encountered, and I think this is something we can follow up on. We did have a question about there are graduate students who use the citation manager Zotero to write and cite. And
Mhm.
we had questions about if Zotero kind of does anything to mess up accessibility in like a Word document or something like that. And I don't have an immediate answer for that. Like I would think in some ways, maybe it wouldn't even matter because it's text. But I would wonder like let's say someone is using APA citation and there's like a bibliography that's made at the end of something. Like I don't know if they would maybe want like the title bibliography to be an H3 or a heading 3 or something like that. I don't know if Zotero does that kind of stuff automatically or if these are things you would have to do after the fact if you want to organize your dissertation in a certain way.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And to be honest with you, I'm not that familiar. I'm not familiar at all with Zotero, so I'm not going to pretend that I have the answer right off the bat. But what I imagine is happening, I think it's just pure text, Elliot. I think you're onto something there. I don't think that it's going to format the citations with random, rogue heading levels or anything like that. But the only thing that I caution with, those kinds of citation builders is just to make sure that the links, if you are including any links within your citations, to make sure that they're meaningful links and that the URLs aren't links themselves. So that might be the only thing that you might need to look out for, to be aware of when you're using those kinds of citation builders.
Or maybe
Does that
to
help?
some citations use footnotes like Chicago. So I think maybe that would
Mhm.
be something to double check would be like if you're using Zotero to write and cite with a citation method that uses footnotes, like that would be something to be careful of too, maybe.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. All right. All right, moving on. Let's talk about best practices for alternative text for visuals. So people who are unable to see images depend on alternative text, and that's often shortened to alt text. And alt text is a short description of an image that lives behind the scenes. So it's part of the metadata of the image. And the purpose is to communicate the content of an image to people who can't see it. And alt text really should be succinct. It should be about one or two sentences. It's just enough information to communicate the idea of the image without burdening the user with too much detail. So when screen reader users encounter an image in a document and that if that image has alt text, then the screen reader will announce image, and then it will announce the corresponding alt text. But it's important to understand that when the alt text is being announced, that screen reader users don't really have any way to interact with that alt text. It just regurgitates it out loud. So it's really not helpful to put things like URLs in alt text because it's really difficult for screen reader users to kind of extract that information from the alt text. So you just want to have just a brief understanding or a brief explanation of what that image is. Um, so a couple of tips for writing alt text is just simply asking, what is the purpose of the image? So as the thesis writer or the dissertation writer, you have decided to incorporate images into your thesis or dissertation. What is the purpose of including those images? And you want to make sure that you're describing the key takeaway of that image. If the image has no meaning or doesn't have any takeaway, you can mark that as decorative. And when you do that, then it just hides it from screen reader users and assistive technology users, and it just skips over images that are marked as decorative. Now, if you have more complex images, such as charts or diagrams, um, you still need to have alt text, but you don't need to describe the complexity of the chart or graph itself. Hopefully that information is incorporated into your dissertation or your thesis. And all you need to do is just briefly describe what the key takeaway is. And this is an area where people have a tendency to overdo alt text. Again, you're not going to describe everything you see. You're describing what matters for understanding your research. And I did take a look at the grad school guidance for including images in thesis and dissertations. And they do emphasize the use of captions and figure labeling rather. But for accessibility, alt text is still required for those images. So captions and alt text actually serve different purposes. Alt text is more of a short description that's embedded in the metadata, and it's intended to communicate the essential meaning of the image to people who can't see it, whereas captions are text that is displayed either below or close to the image. And the purpose of captions is to provide context or an explanation or interpretation of that image for the entire audience. So another way to think of it is if the image matters to your research, write alt text that captures the key takeaway and add a caption that explains or interprets that takeaway. Okay. So writing alt text is probably one of the biggest challenges that our team faces. So I also manage a small group of students that remediate documents, and we get a lot of course materials and also reports and just really complicated charts and graphs. And we're not subject matter experts, and so it's really challenging to write alt text for somebody else's content. So we use a tool called the alt text generator. And I've included a link here, and Elliot has also shared the slide deck with you, so that link is included in the slide deck as well. And I just wanted to provide a really quick demonstration, so I'm just going to exit out of the presentation for now. And I wanted to show you how this works. So this is the website itself. This is the ASU Accessibility Image Creator itself. And I do want to warn you, this does utilize artificial intelligence. But if you select the option here to learn more about this tool, they are not retaining data to store or improve the training of your models. So that's good to know. So if you're concerned about AI, totally understandable, but this tool does not retain any of this information that we're feeding it. So how to use this? First of all, I'm going to find an image here in this dissertation so that we can utilize that for this purpose here. Oh, where'd it go? There it is. Okay, so we've got this. This is actually an image of text, and usually, we don't advocate for images of text. Usually we want to convert this to machine readable text, but this is okay. An image of text is okay in this context because this is for a dissertation on poetry. And so I haven't read this dissertation, but I'm sure that there is a good reason as to why this image is here. And if we wanted to use the image accessibility creator, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a quick snippet of this image. And it's placed a version of that image on my desktop. I'm going to go back to my web application here and refresh. All right, and I can do one of two things. I can either drag and drop the image here, or I can browse for it. So let's look on the desktop and we're going to find that image, and then I can open it. And here we have the representation of that image itself. And if I wanted to add a prompt, I could check this box here and I could add, a prompt, maybe saying, I don't know, this is an excerpt from a certain publication or something like that. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to leave it blank. And then I can select Create Image Details. And I can see up here in the upper right-hand corner, I've got this animation that's going. that means that that it's thinking about the alt text. So I'm just going to scroll up here, and we're going to see how this breaks down. So I get a couple of different output results from this source. I get a long description, and you can see this is several sentences. And then I have alt text, which is just a single sentence, which says, scan page with handwritten poem titled Stanza of Anglo-Saxon Poetry and Annotations. And that is perfectly acceptable alt text for this particular image. And the reason why is because this dissertation is probably going to explain the importance a little bit more, but the alt text just gives you a really quick takeaway of what this image is. Okay, so let's transition back to our PowerPoint presentation. So once you've used this tool to create your alt text, where do you put it? So I've included a screenshot here of a Word for Desktop, and where you would add that alt text is in the metadata of the image that is included in your thesis or your dissertation. So you would click that image, and when you do that, then you'll get this picture format tab that appears. And then you can select the alt text icon from the home ribbon, and that will pop out this alt text panel that you see here. Now, this alt text panel is great because it gives you lots of tips for writing your alt text. Then it provides the panel for writing an alt text, or the text field where you would add the alt text, rather. So this is where you're going to paste your alt text. I wanted to point out a couple of other options here on this slide. So there also is a button here that says Generate Alt Text for Me. This also utilizes artificial intelligence, but it is not as robust as the tool that I shared with you. You can try using this, but it doesn't give you a very good representation. In this example, the AI-generated alt text comes back as a page of a book. So not nearly as robust as the ASU alt text generator. You can also, let me go back here. So if you're happy with the alt text that was generated by the AI that is included in Word, you can select this button here to approve it. But I would recommend pasting in your own alt text instead. Or you have the option here to mark this as decorative. And again, if you do that, then it's going to essentially hide that from the screen reader and make it invisible. So that's where you would add the alt text in Word for Desktop. Now, if you're using the Word for Web, it's a little bit different. The steps start off the same. You would still select or click on the image itself. And then from there, you would select the Picture tab. And the alt text icon is at the very right end of the ribbon there. And when you select the alt text, this panel opens up here, and the field at the very bottom is where you're going to enter in your description. But you'll notice that there is no option to have AI generate alt text for you, and there is no option to mark any images as decorative. So if you're using Word for Web to author your thesis or dissertation, you have to include alt text for all of the images that are included. There's no option for marking them as decorative. Or you can just switch back to the desktop version and have a lot more flexibility that way. Okay, any questions about alt text before moving forward? I kind of saw a little bit of activity in the chat section, so I just wanted to see what kind of questions came up. All right, no questions. Let's continue onward. All right, we're getting there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about metadata. This is one of the highest impact and lowest effort fixes. It takes about 30 seconds to include titles and language attribution, and it really improves the accessibility dramatically. So documents should have titles, and that title should clearly describe the function or the purpose. And in this case, the document title of your thesis or dissertation can just be the title that is on the very front page. And that is often the first content that's announced by the screen reader when the document is opened. And it really helps users quickly understand the content without actually having to delve in and start, immediately consuming the document. They'll start off just by listening to that title, and then that kind of gives them a little bit more idea or understanding of what that document's about. Now, authors should define the document's primary language, and they should also identify any sections within that document for any use of a different language. And this helps ensure that screen readers will pronounce the content accurately and helps improve the overall comprehension for users. So screen readers have the ability to switch on the fly to different languages, depending upon if they have that language file downloaded and installed on their assistive technology. So it's really important to make sure that that language content is coded accurately. So again, the title is the first thing that's going to be announced by screen readers when they open up a document, and the language is going to ensure that the document has correct pronunciation. If that information is missing, that could cause some confusion or an unusable experience. So where do you go to add this metadata? Well, in Word for Mac and Windows, it's a little bit different location. For Mac, you'd go to the File menu and then select Properties from the context menu there. And that's going to open up a Properties dialog window. And on the Summary tab is where you're going to enter in your title. If you're using Word for Windows, you'd go to the File tab and then select Info, and that'll take you to the screenshot here. And the title is actually in the right-hand column under the Properties, and you would just enter in your title there. For adding language for Word for Desktop, I have a kind of a screenshot here that shows that I have one line of text that is in a foreign language. So you would highlight that line of text. And I should mention that since we are in the United States and where probably most of us are using English-based systems, that the default language for your documents is going to be set up for English. So if you needed to set it up for a different language entirely, it's a different process. But if you're going to just choose different sections of your document to make the language attribute, then you would just highlight that, and then you go back to the Review tab, and on the home ribbon, you'd have this language icon, and that's going to open up this language properties dialog box, and then you can select the appropriate language from there. Word from the web, similar steps, but a little bit different execution. So again, you would highlight that text, select the Review tab, and in the upper left-hand corner, you have an editor tool. And at the if you select that, that's going to expose this menu here. And at the very bottom of that menu is the set proofing language. And when you select that, that's going to open up a document properties similar to what we see over here in the desktop application. And then you can select the proper language attribution from there. Okay. Let's talk about accessibility checkers. They're really helpful to evaluate your content for accessibility, and they do provide feedback. So most accessibility checkers, if they're included in your application, they do provide guidance and recommendations for how to fix the issues once they are identified within your document. And it's important to note that accessibility checkers, they're a useful starting point, but they're not a substitute for human review. accessibility checkers, they do have their limitations. So a strong approach is to combine using automated checks with manual review. And the things that you're going to review are, you want to make sure that you're scanning the structure. So you want to make sure that you've got your proper headings in place. And then you want to review the reading order. So you would do that by using your arrow keys. And then, of course, verifying the alt text for images. We've seen that artificial intelligence that's built into the Word environment isn't as robust. So we do need to make sure that those things are accurate. So on this slide, I have screenshots of the accessibility checker that is built into Microsoft Word. And on the left-hand side, I have an image of Microsoft Desktop. And to get to the accessibility checker there, you would go to the Review tab, and then on the home ribbon, you would select Check Accessibility, and that's going to open up this accessibility assistant on the right-hand side here. And in the upper part of that window for the accessibility assistant, this gives you kind of a rundown of the issues that are going to pose accessibility issues for people, and it provides a little bit more context and also provides some feedback as well. On the right-hand side, I have a screenshot of Word for Web. To launch the accessibility checker, if you're using Word for Web, you'd go to the Review tab, select Check Accessibility from the home ribbon, and then we have the accessibility assistant that pops out on the right-hand side. And again, I want to point out that the accessibility checker that's built into, or that's included for the desktop, is a lot more robust than the one that is included in the web version. So if you're doing your final checks, I would recommend using the desktop version, as that has a lot more flexibility and a lot more tools to get your thesis or dissertation to be more accessible. And then the final step in that workflow is to create a PDF. That is what you're going to submit to the graduate school. Now, the best path forward is to either use the commands save as PDF or export to PDF, as that preserves the structure and the tabs. You want to avoid printing to PDF, as that removes all the accessibility information, and it makes remediating that PDF document a lot more challenging down the road. So using save as PDF is included in both Mac and Windows for Word, and it's included in both the desktop and the Word for Web. Export to PDF, that's more of a Word for Web, I'm sorry, more of a Windows kind of an option. So it just gives you a little bit more options. Oops, I went backwards there. All right. Any questions about exporting to PDF before moving on?
Evie, we did have a question about languages.
Yes.
And so if someone, we had a great example from Nastasia in the chat just about like using an Urdu word. And like, so like, would you like have to set the language every time you encounter, like if you're kind of going through your document, like if that word is kind of sprinkled all throughout, would you kind of like do it each time with that word?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. You would have to do it word by word. So if there are words sprinkled throughout your dissertation or thesis, yes, you'd have to go word by word, or paragraph by paragraph. So it's not elegant, but that is the way you would have to do that. Yeah.
And then like even if you're defining the word in parentheses for like, English readers, like I guess the idea is by defining it the language, that just means that the screen reader will pronounce it correctly instead of like defaulting to like an American accent or something like that.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that distinction. All right. Okay, so just want to wrap up by mentioning some common pitfalls that sometimes people run into when they're creating their documents. So instead of using headings, they would use bold text to emphasize a section. So don't do that. That actually does not code the content accurately. So you want to make sure that you're using the heading styles. If you're creating links, don't use things like click here, or don't use the URL for your link. Make sure that you're using more meaningful link language instead. And try to avoid over describing images or not describing them at all, leaving that alt text blank for those images. You do have to have some kind of content for those images. And then I don't know that we talked about using tables for layout. Try to avoid using tables for layout. It really should be for tabular data. But understanding that, sometimes your thesis or dissertation, sometimes you have to lay things out in tabular data, but, be very careful about doing that. And then avoid printing to PDF, as that really strips out all of the accessibility features. All right. So wanted to end the talk today about creating accessible thesis and dissertations by sharing this slide. This is another slide that I would like to thank Mary Colleen for sharing with me. This is progress over perfection. This is a lot of information. But I want to show that progress looks different for everyone. So in this graphic here, we have a series of circles with looks like some kind of a blue liquid. The first series shows progress. You have a little bit of blue liquid in the first circle and a little bit more as we continue on up. So that is a normal progression of progress, I guess you could say. But then the next series, we have the same series of circles, but we have differing values of blue liquid within each one of those circles. But the end circle has more liquid than the beginning circle. So this is also progress. And then I want to point out the last series in this is that we have a lot more variation. We might start off with very little blue liquid in our first bubble, and then a lot, and then a little, and then fewer and fewer, but then and end up with more at the very end. So this is also progress. So just remember that you want to aim for working on your foundational skills. So creating those headings, that structure, and then adding context to that is really, really helpful. You want to start off small with something that is manageable and also replicable, something you can repeat. I can't say that word today for some reason. And then if you find yourself making mistakes, you want to give yourself some grace and give yourself credit for successes as well. And this is most important. Don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. And lastly, wanted to provide you with a list of references. So this has the graduate school information, a little bit more about the Digital Accessibility Initiative. And then I have links to our website that provides information for creating accessible documents using the accessibility checker and then exporting to PDF. And I'm also including a link for the Center for Teaching and Learning in case anybody has questions. They can reach out to them as well as Accessible Technology Services. So we are at 11:01. So a little bit over, but just wanted to